Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's webinar. We're just going to wait for a couple more people to log on because it's just 7 o'clock now, and we'll get started in just a couple minutes. Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining me tonight for today's webinar. We're going to be talking all about nutrition for stress management, and I'm going to be telling you guys some strategies to overcome adrenal fatigue naturally. And if you haven't heard of adrenal fatigue before, that's fine. We're going to go over that tonight. And anybody who is stressed out or feels any symptoms of stress is definitely going to benefit from a lot of the things I'm going to discuss in tonight's webinar. So first, we are going to take a look at Nutrichem. So I really want to just start out with a poll to see how many of you guys are familiar with what we do at Nutrichem. So I'm going to do a little question here, and you guys can answer. So you should see it come up on your screen right away. And I just want to know if you guys are familiar with Nutrichem. So you can click yes or you can click no. So 92% have heard of Nutrichem and 4% haven't. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a little bit of a rundown of who we are. So we are a naturopathic clinic. We are a compounding pharmacy and a retail store. We have 2 locations, both in Ottawa. And in our clinic, we're made up of naturopathic doctors, holistic nutritionists, and clinical pharmacists. And we all work together to help the client find the root cause of their health issues. At our Saint Laurent location, we have the retail store and the naturopathic clinic. And at Richmond Road is where we have our compounding pharmacy, clinic, and retail store. And also we do ship worldwide too. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of detail about me. So my name is Mierzwa. I'm a registered holistic nutritionist. I graduated from Canadian School of Natural Nutrition in 2012. And when I did that schooling, I really got to learn a lot about what nutrition was, what all these different vitamins and minerals and everything were, amino acids, and how they worked in the body. Got to learn about all the different functions of the body. So like we're going to discuss today, adrenal glands. And then in 2014, I was able to get my culinary nutrition expert certification. And the reason that was so important to me is because I was able to really put together the information that I learned becoming a nutritionist and put that into recipes and meal planning, and really making sure that people were able to see why meal planning was so important when it comes to their nutrition. And just laying that out in a really easy to follow format for people is important, because it's great that we can come up with a plan for you, but if it's something that's hard to follow, then it's not going to stick and you're not going to see results. So I do practice in the NutriChem clinic on Richmond Road. We do have nutritionists at both locations. And I specialize in supporting the body through optimal digestion, mindful eating, and mastering meal prepping. So these are three things that kind of no matter what you're dealing with are going to be really important. Our digestion is really important, making sure that we're not only eating mindfully but living mindfully. And we need to get the meal prepping down as well to make sure that we have all these great foods available to us at all times. So we're going to get right into it here. So we're going to start with, what are adrenal glands? So if you're not familiar with adrenal glands, they are two triangle-shaped glands. They sit on top of our kidneys, and our kidneys are just at our lower back. So as you can see, the arrow just points to the very top of the kidney. So that's what our adrenal glands look like. And they're responsible for producing specific hormones called cortisol and aldosterone that play specific roles in our body's overall functioning. So they secrete something called stress hormones. And now, just because they're called stress hormones, it doesn't mean that they're bad. We actually need these hormones in specific levels in our body for our body to function optimally. So these hormones are responsible for regulating our hormone balance, so other hormones in the body that we're going to be talking about. They help to regulate our metabolism and our electrolyte balance. They control the body's sleep and wake cycle. So anybody who has problems sleeping, which again we're going to be talking about in a little bit as well. And they really help to regulate our energy and our mood. So what cortisol does is it gives us a boost of energy. So you may have heard of adrenaline before, and it gives us this boost during a stressful situation. So we're going to take a look at how this actually happens in the body. So our body's stress response, it's called the HPA Axis. And these are a lot of different glands that play a really important role in the cortisol production. So HPA stands for hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, and it's made up of our hypothalamus, our pituitary gland, and adrenal glands. And it controls the levels of cortisol and other stress hormones that our body is secreting. So if you're somebody who has moderate stress, so maybe we can do a poll here again, and I want to see kind of what you guys rate your stress at. So we're going to say stress from 1 to 5. So 5 being the most stressed out. What would you guys rate your stress at? So numbers are changing very quickly here. I'll give you guys a couple minutes to finish putting your numbers in. So remember, 5 is the highest. Okay, so it looks like most people came in at a 3 out of 5. The second highest was a 5 out of 5. And then we have a 2, a 4, and a 1 is coming in last. So a lot of us seem to be sitting around the 3, 4, or 5 mark. So moderate stress. So I would say this is anyone who's experienced maybe a stress from 1 to 2. And this is a healthy, normal stress response, and your body can adequately recover from this type of stress. But if you're sitting around that level 3, 4, or 5 mark, this could be considered high stress, and we can also have an unhealthy response. And what happens is the chronic stress will cause a desensitized HPA axis. So what happens is our body stops producing that cortisol. So we're going to look into this a little bit further. CRH, so corticotropin releasing hormone. This is produced and secreted by the hypothalamus. and it stimulates our pituitary gland to secrete ACTH, which is adrenocorticotropic hormone, which then travels to our kidneys, and it stimulates our adrenals to release glucocorticoids, which is produced in our adrenal glands. And one of the main ones is cortisol. So this activates our response to stress. It stimulates norepinephrine to activate fight or flight. And I want to give you guys a little bit more of a visual of how this actually works. So we're talking about the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus, adrenal gland sitting on the kidneys. So now you guys can actually kind of see it all coming together. So on this slide here, I'm just going to press play, and it's just going to give you guys another rundown of how this actually works in a more visual format.
Welcome to 2-Minute Neuroscience, where I simplistically explain neuroscience topics in 2 minutes or less. In this installment, I will discuss the HPA axis. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal, or HPA axis,
Oh, sorry, it looks like it stopped there.
is best known for its role in our body's natural reaction to stress. The HPA axis includes a group of hormone-secreting glands from the nervous and endocrine systems. The hypothalamus is a small neuroendocrine structure situated just above the brainstem that controls the release of hormones from the pituitary gland, a hormone-secreting gland that sits just below the hypothalamus. The pituitary gland can release hormones into the bloodstream that travel down to the kidneys and influence the secretion of hormones from endocrine glands called the adrenal glands, which sit on top of the kidneys. The primary function of the HPA axis is to regulate the stress response. When we experience something stressful, the hypothalamus releases a hormone called corticotropin-releasing hormone, or CRH. CRH signals the pituitary gland to secrete a hormone called adrenocorticotropic hormone, or ACTH, into the bloodstream. ACTH travels down to the adrenal glands, where it prompts the release of different hormones from different parts of the adrenal glands. It causes the secretion of a class of steroid hormones called glucocorticoids from the cortex, or outer layer of the adrenal glands. One of these glucocorticoids is cortisol, which plays an important role in the stress response. ACTH also triggers the secretion of epinephrine and norepinephrine from the adrenal medulla, which is the center of the adrenal glands. Epinephrine and norepinephrine are substances that act as hormones and neurotransmitters. When released from the adrenal glands, they act as hormones. The release of cortisol causes a number of changes that help the body to deal with stress. For example, it helps to mobilize energy, like glucose, so the body has enough energy to cope with a prolonged stressor. Norepinephrine and epinephrine act to keep the body vigilant and able to deal with the stressor by promoting alertness, and by increasing blood flow to skeletal muscles to ensure they are ready to act. When cortisol levels in the blood get high, this is sensed by receptors in areas of the brain like the hypothalamus, which leads to the shutting off of the stress response through what is known as a negative feedback mechanism.
Okay, so that's a little bit more of a visual for you guys of the HPA axis, because I know it's a little bit confusing to explain, and without seeing a visual, it's kind of hard to picture your body actually going through the movements of this. So that's a great way so you can see everything working from point A to B to C. So what happens after that is we can go into something called fight or flight, which is our sympathetic nervous system. So basically, the sympathetic nervous system triggers a burst of energy, which is our cortisol, and that's to respond to a stressful situation by activating the hypothalamus, and then the pituitary gland, and then lastly the adrenal glands. So that's what's giving our body that rush of cortisol. So this is something that we could expect to happen in a stressful situation, but really what's happening is people are really feeling this way from the time they wake up in the morning to the time they go to bed. And this is something I like to think of the modern stress epidemic. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a story here, and I want to know if anything in here sounds familiar to you. I know personally I've had a lot of adrenal fatigue issues in the past, and a lot of these things are things that I struggled with too. So let me know if any of these things sound familiar for you. So after hitting your snooze button 3 times in the morning, you roll out of bed, you're feeling really unrested, just as unrested as the day before. But that's nothing that a couple of cups of coffee can't fix for you, right? You carry on throughout breakfast and lunch, and now you look at the clock, it's 2 p.m., and you're really crashing harder than ever. You reach for another cup of coffee, or maybe you're looking for a sugary snack or something salty. And then on your way home from work, you're driving home and you can grab something from the closest drive-through, because even just thinking of cooking anything is extremely exhausting. Once you get home, you sit down, you relax on the couch, and you're not ticking off things on your to-do list. And then you go to bed in hopes of starting fresh the next day. So this is a really common story that I hear from a lot of my clients. And again, we're going to do another poll, and I want to see how many of you kind of resonate with this as well. So let's take a look and see. So it's just calculating the results here. Okay, so as you guys can see, we have 68% of you saying yes, this story does resonate with you somehow, and 32% saying no. So the reason that a lot of people come in and they're feeling this way is because of this modern stress epidemic. And the way that people that are managing stress, it's not working for them. So most clients I see are really doing little to nothing to help manage their stress. Sometimes they could be, going for a walk, reading a book, taking time for themselves. But in reality, this isn't really enough to manage stress, especially when we have adrenal fatigue. We need to dig a little bit deeper and do a little bit more work to bring our body back to balance. So fight or flight, what happens when we're in this survival state? So our heart rate starts to increase. We have blood flow moving to our muscles, our heart, and our lungs. We have lung expansion for more oxygen intake. And we also have digestive processes that come to a stop, and we have reduced blood flow to our digestive system. Our immune function is also reduced, and glucose enters our bloodstream much quicker for energy, so sugar entering the bloodstream. And we also have that stimulation for cortisol release. So again, I'm going to do another poll here just to get an idea of what you guys are dealing with. I want to know what kind of problems you guys are having. So the next one we're going to look at is, are you aware when you're in this stage? So do you ever have that feeling of the increased heart rate? Do you feel any breathing difficulties? And things like that. So a lot of people will experience like nervous bowels, so digestive upset. Some people experiencing diarrhea when they're in a stressful state. Think of a time when maybe somebody cut you off in traffic and kind of what that felt like with the heart rate going and stuff like that. Okay, so we have 76% of you saying yes, that you know when you enter this stage. So it's a pretty real feeling that we're actually having that cortisol increase, and we're in that fight or flight stage. So that's great that a lot of you are very aware that that's happening. And then we're going to talk about our parasympathetic nervous system. You might have also heard of this as rest and repair or rest and digest. So this is our system of balance, and this is a system we need to be addressing for stress and adrenal health. And later we're going to be talking about some different ways that we can really simply support the parasympathetic nervous system and get back to balance. So what happens in this balanced, restful state is our body can finally recover from whatever stressful situation we were in. We can repair and bring all the systems back into homeostasis. We bring the body to a state of calm and relaxed feeling. We have blood flow going back into our digestive system. Our muscles become relaxed and our heart rate decreases. You can think about a time maybe if you've ever done a yoga class, or if you feel really great after exercise, or even if you spent time with a good friend. These are all feelings of being in rest and repair, so kind of on that more relaxed side of it. So adrenal health and stress. When we think of stress, there's so many things that stress us out, but what it can be defined as is any perceived physical or psychological change that's disrupting an organism's metabolic balance. And keep in mind here, it's also saying any perceived change. So it doesn't mean that these things are actually happening to us. It's just if we personally are perceiving any changes or any stressful situations. And what happens is stress activates our HPA axis into fight or flight, which we just discussed. And like I said before, so high stress, so if you're rating your stress at a 3, 4, or 5 out of 5, it's an unhealthy stress response, and this chronic stress is what's going to cause the desensitized HPA axis. Adrenal health and cortisol. So I told you guys a little bit about what cortisol is, how it's secreted, and when we look at cortisol, it can either be elevated or depleted, or hopefully when we test and look at it, it's normal. So elevated cortisol is when our body is in that chronic fight or flight. Basically, our cortisols are going to be high on a consistent basis. But our body can't keep this up over a long period of time. So how we were saying that it gets desensitized, this is when we move more to the depleted level. So this is when our body kind of gives up on secreting the cortisol and these levels plummet. So like I said before, just because it's called a stress hormone doesn't mean we want it low. We need it to be balanced. And the key thing to remember is that we support differently through supplementation, whether your cortisol is elevated or depleted. But the good thing is that we can support very similarly through diet and lifestyle. So I'm going to be talking a lot about different things for diet and lifestyle that we can do to support a healthy cortisol level and to manage stress. And of course, a little bit on supplementation you guys can do as well. So I'm curious again, we're going to do a poll to see, have any of you ever done a cortisol test before? So I'm going to launch the poll here. You guys can go ahead. So there's 3 different options. The first one is a serum blood test. The second is the saliva test. And the third one is no, so you've never done the testing. Okay, so we have our results here. So some of you, 32%, have done the blood testing, 6% have done the saliva, and 61% of you haven't done any testing before. So we're going to look at the different types of testing we can do. So like I said, we need cortisol to be at a specific level. And we can test through blood and saliva. So the serum blood test, we do that in the morning, and that's done before 10 a.m. So our naturopathic doctors at Nutricam can requisition these testings for people. So when they look at the testing, they'll get back the results, and they say that 300 is normal, but our naturopaths like to see this over 350 for an optimal level. So we're not just looking at the normal level, we want to look at what is optimal for you. And then we have the saliva test. So this one's done with your saliva. It's done throughout the day, so you give many samples as the day goes on. This is going to give us a little bit more of an accurate result, and it's going to show the exact curve of your cortisol throughout the day. And adrenal health is going to affect not only your cortisol and your stress levels, but it really does affect everything else going on in the body. So it's going to affect all of our different other systems. So anybody who has a thyroid imbalance, they should always investigate your adrenals when you have thyroid issues. So I personally had some thyroid issues, and when I looked into it further, my adrenals were definitely kind of at the root cause of everything going on. So you want to look at underactive or overactive thyroid, or if somebody has Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune condition. And again, these are all things that our clinic does test for. We want to look at sex hormone imbalance. So if you're having low progesterone, cortisol can actually steal progesterone to boost itself up. So if you have low cortisol, it can be common to have low progesterone as well. And then, like we've talked about already, cortisol depletion, and that's resulting in burnout. And adrenal health and sleep. So this is a big one that I hear a lot. So all different types of sleep issues. So it might be somebody having trouble falling asleep. If you're waking up in the middle of the night, we hear a lot of complaints of people waking up at 1, 2, or 3 in the morning, difficulty getting back to bed. And another one that's really common and something that I experienced a lot was trouble getting out of bed in the morning. So feeling just so exhausted even after a really good night's sleep. So you could sleep 9 hours, 10 hours, 11 hours, but no matter when you wake up, you're just not feeling rested. So again, I want to do a poll to see what you guys are experiencing. So I want to know if you have any of the following issues or some of them. You can choose more than one. So you can go ahead. There's falling asleep, waking at night, trouble waking up in the morning, or no sleep issues. And if you're having no sleep issues, you're very lucky. Okay, so here are the results. So a lot of you are waking up in the night, and this is a really common one for adrenal fatigue. Trouble falling asleep, 51%. Trouble waking up in the morning, 37%. And then 6 of you who have no problem sleeping at all, which is really fantastic. So there's definitely ways that we can support the adrenal glands and to support you getting back to better sleep. And then we have adrenal health and digestion. So there is a real physical connection between the gut and the brain. At NutriChem, we talk a lot about the microbiome, and what the microbiome is, it's a vast ecosystem of microbes that live in your gut. It's basically like another organ. So there's all different bacteria, viruses, different gut microbes that are living in there. And we also have our enteric nervous system. So this is also known as the brain of the gut. There's something called our vagus nerve, which is connected to our nervous system. And that's kind of how the brain and the gut talk to each other. So if you've ever been one of those people who, when you're in a stressful situation, or if you're nervous, you may experience something called nervous bowels, and this is really common that people will get loose stools when they're under a lot of stress or if they are nervous about something. And then we have adrenal health and energy, which is a big one. A lot of people have low energy when they're under stress and their adrenals are struggling. So this is going to kind of put everything that we talked about together. So it's going to result in the poor sleep, poor hormone function, and poor absorption of nutrients. All of these issues, even if it's 1 or 2 or 3, they all affect and regulate our body's energy production. So now we're going to talk a little bit further on digestion, and we're going to talk about adrenal recovery, things that you can start to do to support your adrenal health and to manage stress better. So you may have heard of the term that you are what you eat. But for me, the way that I explain it to a lot of my clients is you actually are what you absorb. So digestion is really important when it comes to stress and adrenal glands because we want to make sure that we're getting the absolute most out of our food. We want to make sure we're absorbing all the nutrients, vitamins, minerals, amino acids, fatty acids to make sure that we're fueling our body properly. So digestion is the process of efficiently breaking down our food into more absorbable nutrients so that we can actually absorb them into the bloodstream and use them. Digestion starts in the mouth. So this is where we start to ingest our food. We have our saliva, which actually starts to digest carbohydrates with amylase. So as soon as we start chewing, this signals the body to start the digestive process. And then we have digestion of protein, which happens in the stomach by hydrochloric acid. Proteins are broken down into amino acids. And the stomach needs to maintain an acidic environment to make sure that it's fighting off any bacteria, any harmful viruses, so they don't actually enter the body. And then these amino acids are used for building building muscles, organ function, healing wounds, repairing tissue, and supporting our immune system. So we want to make sure that we have sufficient stomach acid to make sure we're breaking everything down, because that's going to be another start to digestion. So then it goes to our small intestine. So this is where we have digestion of fat. So lipase, that's another enzyme that helps with digestion. So different fats like avocado, nuts, seeds, oils, fish, and meat. And what lipase does is it breaks down fat into fatty acids. And then we also find amylase again, which was found in the saliva. So this further breaks down our carbohydrates into glucose. And this is actually our body's main source of energy. So you can see there's a lot going on in the digestive system so far. And the small intestine is where a lot of these different nutrients are absorbed. So we want to make sure we're having really good digestion. And last but not least, we have our large intestine. So this is where the last of the absorption happens, if there's anything left over. And it converts all of our digested food into feces. And this is also where excess water is absorbed in the colon. And then we should be having elimination at the very, very least once per day. So this is if everything's going well in the digestive system and we're using all these nutrients to help heal the body, fuel the body for energy, and support our adrenal glands. And this is what happens if everything is working properly. But if not, then we're not going to be absorbing everything to the best of our capability. And we want to keep in mind that the overall health of our adrenals is really critical to the health of our gut. And there's a lot of factors that are going to inhibit our digestion. So a couple of reasons why things may not go well in our digestive system. We have food intolerances, so if your body can't digest some specific foods properly. Alcohol, sugar, caffeine, prescription drugs, and stress. So these are all things that are going to interrupt good digestion. And now we're going to take another poll here. So I want to know from you guys, do you guys think that your diet needs improvement? Maybe some of you have seen a nutritionist before, maybe some of you guys haven't. Maybe you guys are already trying to do some work in your diet, which is really great. So I want to know if you guys think that your diet could use any improvement at all. Okay, so the results here. So 76% of you think yes, your diet needs improvement, and 24% of you guys say no, you don't think your diet needs improvement. So that's great. 76% of you are open and willing to change your diet, and 24% of you, hopefully you guys are already on the right track, which is really great. So we're going to look at some foods to eliminate to help with adrenal health and stress. So when we look at caffeine, processed and packaged foods, sugar, and alcohol, all of these things are going to bring stress onto our body. And if we're constantly pumping these things into our digestive system, it's like our body doesn't get a break to get back into that rest and repair system. So if we're constantly giving that jolt of caffeine, you know, in the morning, in the afternoon, and then if we're eating any processed packaged foods, and then we have the sugar and alcohol on top of that, we're really giving our adrenal glands a hard time. So these are foods that we want to eliminate, and at the end of the webinar you guys are going to be getting a checklist of things to do. So I always recommend to start to eliminate these things very slowly. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. You don't have to start all of this tomorrow. So a lot of my clients say to me, they're really skeptical about giving up caffeine. They rely on it every day, and they've tried taking it out before and they get headaches. So same thing with sugar and processed and packaged foods. You can have a little bit of withdrawal symptoms when this happens. And what I tell them to do, and you'll see that outlined in the checklist as well. So caffeine, for example, say you drink 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day. What I want you to start doing is slowly decrease that every couple of days. So the first day you can start by decreasing half a cup, and then maybe 2 days later decrease by another half a cup. And then you want to keep slowly decreasing until you're at 0. And this way you're not going to suffer from a lot of the symptoms that people talk about when they take caffeine or other foods they rely on out of the diet. And now we want to talk about healthy foods to include. So this is a little bit of a generic list, but we really want to look at healthy fats. We want to look at quality protein. And these two, fats and protein, are really important for balancing blood sugar, which we'll talk about next. We want to have lots of fresh vegetables and fruits, so lots of fresh veggies and fruits for their fiber content. And fiber is really great for fueling the microbiome, so it helps to make sure that all the good, healthy bacteria is breeding in the gut, and we're feeding all of the good stuff in there. Then we have our nuts and seeds, so that's kind of more of the healthy fats and protein. And we want to look at some gluten-free grains as well for our carbohydrates. And balancing blood sugar. So blood sugar is very important to balance when we're under stress or if we have adrenal fatigue issues. So stress signals our body to raise the blood sugar level, and that's going to help to generate energy to respond to stress. But we don't need that 24/7 when that cortisol is already pumping through. So this can actually attribute to more anxiety, aggravation, irritability, and people having low mood and things like that. This is actually going to cause us more stress signaling, and it's kind of putting our blood sugar levels on a roller coaster. So the main things that you can do to help balance your blood sugar levels is incorporate healthy fats and protein at each meal and snack, because fats and proteins have a slower release compared to different things like sugar, different carbohydrates, sweet potato and stuff like that. Even the complex ones, we still want to make sure that we're pairing with some fat and protein to get that more stable energy and glucose release. And lifestyle is going to be really important, so you need to recalibrate your lifestyle for adrenal recovery. And stress reduction is really important to kind of get your body back into that state of balance. So something that we really need to work on is establishing more of a regular sleep and wake cycle. Even on the weekends, we want to try to go to sleep and wake up at the same time, just to give our body a little bit more balance and to help regulate our energy levels. And then hopefully our body will get used to that, and it's going to help with the adrenal recovery. And again, really important to go to bed by 10 p.m. So if we look at that cortisol curve during the day, if we're not going to bed by 10 p.m., what happens is we actually can get a little bit of a spike later on in the evening. And if we kind of miss that window between maybe 9 and 10, for some people it could be up to 11 o'clock, we can almost get another boost of energy around that time, making it really difficult to go to bed, and it's not going to help to regulate your sleep and wake cycle. We want to look at exercise. So we want to do moderate exercise, things like walking, weightlifting, and things like yoga. And if you're somebody who does a lot of really high intensity exercises, so if you're a marathon runner or if you do a lot of spin class, a lot of high intensity aerobics and things like that, you may want to take a little bit of a break from that for a while, just until we can get our cortisol level back up to a state of balance. Because those high intensity exercises, even though they may feel good and they may feel good after, it's still some type of a stress to the body, and we want to limit as much of that stress as possible. And then we have deep breathing before meals. So this is a really simple practice that I recommend to a lot of my clients who are kind of a little bit more closed-minded to things like meditation, yoga, and things like that. So taking one really deep breath before all of your meals is a fantastic way to come out of fight or flight and into rest and digest, or rest and repair. And we talked about bringing that blood flow back to the digestive system and how important digestion is for stress and adrenal health. So just really simple, taking that one deep breath before a meal. I think that's something that everybody can incorporate fairly easily. And then also taking a breath break during the day. So if you're sitting at your desk, or if you're standing, taking the elevator or walking up the stairs, just take a moment to take a couple deep breaths, and you'll be surprised at how instantly calm that you're going to feel. And then what you can work up to is a 5-minute meditation. So meditation doesn't have to be this whole 20-minute, 30-minute, 45-minute part of your day. It can really be as simple as anywhere between 1 to 5 minutes of just a silent meditation and just thinking about your breath and kind of getting back into that rest and digest or rest and repair mode. Another thing that I really like to recommend to a lot of my clients as well is something called a mindfulness meditation course, and it's called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. This course is offered by so many different people in Ottawa, and if you are out of the city, you can just really simply Google MBSR and whatever city or country you're in, and a lot of courses will come up. And it's usually an 8-week course that's really great for getting somebody into meditation and showing them how to create more mindfulness throughout the day. And we're going to talk about key nutrients to include. So probiotics are so important. So we talked about the microbiome, all the good healthy bacteria in the gut, and that's what a probiotic is. So it's good healthy bacteria. And what a probiotic will do is it will help to reduce stress-induced cortisol release. It decreases nervous bowel, and it also is great for vagus nerve stimulation. So some studies show that there have been improvements in anxiety in patients with chronic fatigue compared to a placebo, so people taking a probiotic. They also show decrease in stress-associated diarrhea, so again, that nervous bowel. And then they also lower cortisol in med students prior to exams compared to a group that did not take the probiotics. And at NutriChem, we have our really great, fantastic, shelf-stable probiotic. It's gluten and dairy-free, and that's the Nutridophilus. And if you're looking for some food sources, we want to focus on fermented foods. So things like kimchi, sauerkraut, tempeh, and kefir are all really great food sources of probiotics. And just to keep in mind, you're not going to necessarily get the same dose from food as a supplement, so it is good to supplement when needed, but I'm also a really firm believer in getting a lot of them from food as well. Our B vitamins. So during periods of stress, we actually burn through our B vitamins really quickly, so we need to replenish these through supplements. We can get some through food, but again, not enough when we're under the state of stress. We need to support the body a little more fully. So they act as a coenzyme, meaning that they are catalysts for many biological functionings in the body. And when we're looking at taking a B vitamin, we want to make sure they're in their most bioavailable forms, meaning that our body can absorb them properly, and they're already in their converted forms for absorption. So for an example, we want to look at something like B12. There's a couple different forms. So methylcobalamin will be the most absorbable form of a B vitamin. And then we also have cyanocobalamin, which is not as well absorbed, meaning it needs to be converted for your body to use it correctly. And also why B vitamins are important. So if we're having poor digestion, remember that's going to affect the absorption rate of these vitamins from our food. And if you want to look at getting some more food-based sources, we can do things like brewer's yeast, making sure we're getting some good gluten-free grains, liver, meat for B12 is really fantastic, some nuts and seeds, and leafy greens. So a lot of folic acid in our leafy greens. And magnesium glycinate. So this is something that a lot of people should really be taking. So it helps with energy production in our body. So it's part of our ATP cycle. Magnesium is really good for restful sleep. So any of you who have problems with sleep, magnesium is going to be really beneficial. And it's good for body pain and muscle cramps as well. And again, with that poor digestion, so if we do suffer from poor digestion, we're not going to be absorbing as much from our food. And again, we have our Mag. So it comes in 2 different doses, 120 milligrams and 200. So depending on the dose, a higher one might be good if you're taking a higher dose of magnesium daily. And then food sources of magnesium. So we have our different nuts and seeds, spinach, and cacao powder is a really good source, but just keep in mind that there is a bit of caffeine in cacao as well. So in smaller quantities, it's great. So your adrenal recovery, you need to get support. So what you guys can do is you can actually claim the free adrenal recovery checklist at the end of the webinar. So after, when you're filling out the survey, you just click yes that you would like the adrenal recovery checklist. And this is something that's really great that you can put on your fridge. It just kind of tick these things off as you go. So remember, it doesn't have to be all or nothing when you're first starting out. And everything is done in different stages. So you can kind of go at your own comfortable pace. And with that, you will also get a free special offer for webinar attendees only. So you'll be getting that with the survey, with the checklist too, with the survey. And something that is really great to do is getting a friend or a family member on board, and you guys can help reach these goals together. So it's always a lot easier when you have that support. And then, of course, NutriChem is always here for support for all of you. And we always recommend working with a nutritionist and a naturopathic doctor. So a little bit on what a nutritionist does. So we really focus on nourishing your body through whole foods, real foods, good quality. And for us, when we're sitting down with somebody, we want to make sure that the plan that we're giving them is an optimal diet for them that's going to make them feel energetic. We want to make sure that it's easy for something for you to follow. We're not going to go and do anything crazy. We want to work with your lifestyle and your schedule to make sure that you can stick to it and really get the benefits. And of course, it's going to support your optimal health. So what we do is we actually do a full health and nutrition intake. What you can start doing now, and this is really good for even your own, just kind of looking at it on your own, is filling out a 7-day food log. So when you're filling out that food log, I want you to write down everything that you're eating from the time you wake up, from the time you go to bed. We want to be looking at all the beverages you're drinking every day, so it's tea, coffee, water, energy drinks. Make sure you're writing all that down. Because a lot of my clients, when we go through their food log together, they're always so surprised at how many of these different foods can sneak in throughout the week. So it's a really good snapshot of a full week of what you're eating, and just kind of get familiar with some of your habits, and just that way you can start to make some of those slow changes on the checklist. We also do personalized meal plans. So not everybody's the same. People have different food preferences, people have different intolerances, and everybody has a different eating schedule. So we make sure that we do personalized meal plans specifically for you. And of course, we always offer ongoing support. And then working with a naturopathic doctor. So we have a couple naturopathic doctors at NutriChem. And what you can do is you can get tested with one of our naturopaths, and they're going to help you find out your cortisol and different nutrient levels in your body. They can also recommend specific supplements regarding high or low cortisol, because like I said before, they are supplemented with a little bit differently. And they also make a personalized multivitamin to help support energy and to help support everything going on when we take a look at your blood work. Because again, everybody's different, so we should all be having different things in our multivitamins that support us specifically. And not only that, but our naturopathic doctors at NutriChem, they can also prescribe bioidentical hormones, and that's when necessary. So when looking at your blood work, so things like we talked about before, looking at the sex hormones and thyroid and things like that, they are able to prescribe for that. So that is your stress and adrenal recovery plan. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for listening and to taking the time out of your night to get some more education on stress and adrenal health. And I want to know if you guys have any questions. So just below, you should be able to see the chat box there. So you guys can go ahead and type in any questions that you have there, or even in the question area there. So I see a few of you are there. Let's see. I don't know, so it looks like some of you guys had a frozen thing on the poll there, so sorry about that. Okay, so I have a question here. So can you guys test cortisol levels at NutriChem? So yes, our naturopathic doctors can test for cortisol levels, and not only cortisol level, but different nutrients in the body as well. So yes, we can absolutely do testing for that. Another question here. When taking Synthroid for hypothyroidism, are adrenal guides a factor? So if you are supporting your body through hypothyroidism, it's definitely a good idea to look at your adrenal glands. So absolutely, if you're already taking Synthroid, we can still support your adrenal glands. That's actually going to be very important in conjunction with the thyroid. And then I have another person with a question. So can adrenal fatigue impact digestion of vegetables? Yes, absolutely. So adrenal fatigue and stress will impact digestion of anything. So kind of how we went through that digestive process. If our digestion isn't working properly, sometimes we might see undigested food in the stool. So that's a really common symptom of a disrupted microbiome and digestive issues. So you might see some digested food in the stool. You may have constipation or diarrhea. So those are definitely all related. So I have someone here saying, I like that you formulate individual supplements. So yeah, to us that's very important. So personalized health solutions is really what we stand for, because not everybody's going to be the same. So there's really no one size fits all when it comes to supporting everybody's health. So another question here, is adrenal gland burnout repair always possible? Yes, I think it absolutely is. It's not always going to be a very quick process. For some people, it can take a very long time. I can tell you from my personal experience, when I was suffering from a lot of adrenal and thyroid issues, it took me at least 6 months to really start feeling better. So with everything that I was doing and incorporating, and you guys are going to get that checklist as well, was a lot of things that I did, and it did take about 6 months for me to finally start feeling that. And everybody is different, so it really depends on how severe it is. Some people can come back in a month and say that they're starting to feel really good too. So again, everybody's different, but yeah, it is definitely possible. So another question here. I have only occasional instances of stress. Pretty balanced life otherwise. Is there any one nutrient or food that I can take in more of at those times when I feel particularly stressed? So there's a couple options for that. If you're a coffee drinker, you can switch to something like matcha green tea or regular green tea. Even though it still has the caffeine in it, it also has something called L-theanine in it, which is really great for calming and relaxing. And then if you're looking at more of the supplement side, starting with something really gentle like magnesium is going to be good for if you're feeling kind of more that acute stress. We also make a couple different products. One's called L-theanine, which is in the green tea. So we make that in a supplement form as well, which is good for that occasional stress. And then we have another one called phosphogabamin, which if you're interested in that one, I would definitely come in and talk to some of our staff or some of our naturopathic doctor to see if that would be a suitable recommendation for you. Somebody would like to know, how accessible is a naturopath at Nutrichem? Is it simple to get an appointment? Yes, it is very simple to get an appointment. You can access our naturopaths quite quickly. They are probably booking into January now. You may be able to get it in December if you're looking to very quickly, but you can really simply contact our clinic. So the email is clinic@nutrichem.com. And they can let you know the soonest that you are able to get in with a naturopath, and you don't need a requisition to see one. Somebody would like to know how we test cortisol levels, blood, urine, saliva, which is most accurate. So the way that we do it is we first do it through the blood test. And if somebody is showing abnormal results, then we may do a little bit deeper digging and do the saliva test, because like I said, it gives a little bit more of an accurate result, because you're looking at the cortisol throughout the day. So we're going to have a lot of ups and downs of our cortisol levels. So the saliva will be more accurate in that way. Another question here, how does melatonin fall under the umbrella of a holistic approach to sleeplessness? So melatonin can be helpful for sure, but there's also a lot of other things we want to look at. So we need to look at your cortisol levels. We want to look at thyroid. We want to look at different nutrients in the body to see what the root cause is that's going on. But yeah, melatonin could be a good approach to sleeplessness, but again, depending on the person. So does your doctor order the same test, or do you order different ones? So if your doctor will do the cortisol test for you, that should be the same as the one that we would do. There's not too many medical doctors that requisition the test. We do have some people that their MDs will. But yes, as far as I know, it's going to be the same testing. The saliva testing should also be the same across the board. Okay, was there any other questions at all anyone had? So I just want to remind you guys, so at the end of the webinar, you can do the survey and you can request to get the Adrenal Health checklist. And that's going to give you just a little bit more of a straightforward protocol that you can start on your own to start getting some of that energy back and manage your stress. And again, working with a naturopathic doctor and a nutritionist can be really helpful if you find yourself struggling or you're not sure where to start. We're always here to help guide you guys in the right direction and answering any questions you may have. And there will be a recording of the webinar sent out tomorrow for everybody, along with the slides for you to follow along. And if you guys have any more questions after this, if anything comes to mind, you can either call our clinic or you can email us. Again, it's clinic@nutrichem.com, and one of our patient coordinators or myself will be happy to get back to you. So I just wanted to say thank you again to everyone who joined the webinar, and I hope you guys have a great night. Thank you.